Welcome to another episode of the Puncher's Chance podcast. I'm your host, John Lodge, coming to you from the Sports Lodge, and my co-host, as always, Jordan Grenke, coming to you from Castle Grenke. We had quite the card last weekend. You were off in Niagara. We were texting back and forth, and I know you got a story to tell us about how you found your way to the fight or to watch the fights, but before we get into your interesting story, there is the story, the talk of the town in the UFC, and that is Khamzat Chimaev. He finished another man in the first round, but this time it was with a single punch. It just gets quicker and quicker and quicker. Man, this guy's star is so bright, and I don't see it getting any dimmer anytime soon.
No, I think that now you're looking at the kind of trajectory that you would see. This is beyond. The only thing this could equate with was pre Conor hurting himself in the Max Holloway fight, the Conor trajectory. I mean, you've got a guy who's coming in and doing things that we've never seen before. Very unique style, amazing approach, just enough arrogance to not rub you the wrong way, to rub all the fighters the wrong way, but not rub fans the wrong way. Talks the talk, walks the walk, and you are looking at the new global star in the UFC.
Yeah, man. I mean, we both watched the Ariel and our DC show, the Hawani DC show, I should say. If I'm going to talk about it properly.
Better say East and Hawani. If Daniel Cormier catches you saying Hawani and DC, we've seen how he feels about it. Careful.
Yeah, I don't want to get put into any sort of a position where DC is unhappy with me. Okay, moving on. But DC is definitely not unhappy with Chimaev. He has wide eyes for this fighter. Coming into it, he was he didn't know what he'd do against Gerald, but he was pretty pumped up. I watched the Twitter video the night of the fight where he was freaking out to Ariel about him running right through Gerald with one punch, and he went so far as to say this man is going to be a double champ in 2021.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I gotta say, DC sometimes criticizes Ariel Helwani about being too much of a fanboy, and here he is just absolutely letting loose. I don't think he's wrong. I think Chimaev is a little bit small for 185 because some people will cut down from like 220, 215. I think he's a natural 170 pounder, but I mean, when you put out a pretty large middleweight with one punch like that, it's scary. I'm not saying he can't compete. I'm not saying he shouldn't compete. I don't think Daniel Cormier is that far off. I think it's fun to get excited, and again, we shouldn't. It's important to keep your expectations somewhat level. But when you've seen these three performances, like submission, TKO, KO, all in the span of 3 fights in 66 days, and just looks like he's just getting more and more dominating in each fight, it's hard not to be excited. I think 2021 might be pushing a little bit, but I mean, who knows at this point? Every time we see this guy in the octagon, it is a different level of greatness. And I don't remember being this excited about a new fighter in a very long time.
Without getting too vulgar, Dana White's table raised a couple inches after that one punch.
Yes. Yeah. Because his wallet was getting that much fatter. If you want to keep
that's exactly it. Yeah, that's here we go. His wallet was getting bigger. That's the analogy I was making. His wallet. One guy who isn't impressed with Chimaev, though, we talked about it a little bit pre-show, is the style bender himself, the holder of one of those titles. He's not afraid of him. He's gone so far as to say hasn't watched a single one of his fights, and he's asked someone about him, and he's only fought losers. So
absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. Israel Adesanya is one of the most intelligent fighters that we have. He would be foolish. He's all over social media. He's aware of social media blogs. He's even quoted saying that he follows the MMA media sites. He knows everything that's reported about him, which means that he knows everything that's reported, period. He knows absolutely who it is. You're looking at a guy who was the talk of the town a year ago, and now you have a new up-and-coming person in their weight class coming through the ranks, getting a lot of hype, and listen, has fought basically 3 times since we've seen Izzy last. Izzy doesn't like to share the spotlight, as we all know. Look at the remarks that he made about being somewhat okay, but not totally okay with sharing the cover of the UFC 4 game. He doesn't like to share that spotlight. Last week, right, it was all Chimaev, right? And now it's Izzy's fight week, and the first thing he gets asked is about someone who's only had 3 fights in the UFC. the table set there for him to be a little bit butthurt, and it's not. I don't even blame him to put the focus on him for his fight week. Exactly. It's easy to just say, never heard of the guy. So you never have to answer another question for the entire week. Because his whole job right now, other than fighting, is to sell pay-per-views and get people excited about this upcoming fight week.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it was BS that he never, that he had never seen Chimaev fight, but it just rubs a little bit of salt in the wound. And if anybody you don't want to be adding fire to, it's that man. So as much as he might know better, right? To the media, that's a poke. That's a poke, and I don't think I'd be poking that bear. I really don't. I think Chimaev is the kind of guy that you really just you don't want to antagonize. I've only seen a little bit of him, but I've talked to friends who have watched him pre UFC, and they've told me the same thing. He's been this same guy coming up. He's a dangerous man, and I think it's not just what he brings to the octagon skill wise, but it's mentally, right? Mearshart lost that fight before he walked into the octagon, right? So we know that, and now we're looking ahead to Damian Maia, and like you said, we're supposed to be talking about. I should have started this pay-per-view. I wish it was a pay-per-view. I should have started this podcast off talking about the upcoming fight, but anyone wants to talk about is Chimaev, so we had to talk about Chimaev, and that's in Maia's head too. Now he knows he's next up, right? So
I think that Maia, Sorry,
I was going to say, there was, I don't know who it was, but there was a fighter on the previous card who said that if Maia backs out, he's in.
Yeah.
So, I don't know who that was, but either way, man, I just think it's hard not to have this guy in your head.
Honestly, I think that Damian Maia would have looked at the first couple fights and thought, oh, wow, this guy's pretty good on the ground. But I mean, we're talking about Damian Maia. I think he's tied for most submission wins in UFC history. Or at one point had the record. But you're also talking about a guy who is one of the best, if not the best, jiu-jitsu practitioner that we've ever seen in the UFC. So being on the ground doesn't necessarily scare him. Now, when you saw what you saw at 185 with what happened with Gerald, if I were Damian Maia, I would be second guessing it myself, because you went from having what could be an interesting ground battle, like we saw Ben Askren, bit of a one-trick pony. Ben likes to take guys down. Damian Maia absolutely mauled him, But once you see the hands, every fight starts on your feet. And when you think to yourself, wow, I have to get to the ground with this guy, he's an experienced wrestler, a very experienced grappler, has freestyle wrestling credentials all over from Europe. I would be second guessing myself too, especially after that last fight. So I'm not saying Damian Maia is scared. Damian Maia is a tough guy, but he's a guy who's well into his 40s now and is going to fight maybe the most exciting prospect the UFC has. So I actually kind of feel bad for Damian Maia, a little bit on the scared side.
Okay, so we talked about it. I asked you the question on the last podcast. This is the co-main event now, right? This is the co-main event of his card. It's got to be, right?
Has to be, without a doubt. I mean, putting Chimaev anywhere else on any card, I don't even want to see him headlining a fight night. I want to see him co-main eventing, like right under a giant star. Same treatment Sean O'Malley was getting, same treatment that Conor got. I think this guy's going to be a big enough star. Definitely has the skills. He's unbelievably exciting. He does, for a guy with broken English, has some of the best press I've ever seen. Did you see the part in the press conference when someone said, "Man, I'm a dog" in there, and he goes, "Why you say dog? What is dog? Why you say dog? I'm a wolf. Wolf eat dog." It was incredible. Like, he's good with broken English, which is, I mean, you can't. I don't want to see him on or headlining the prelims or the undercard. I want to see this guy co-main eventing or jumps in last minute for the Gilbert Burns, like Usman fight, which would be crazy, I know, but like he's just in that position. He's positioned himself perfect. And in poker, he'd be on the button. Like he's got that good position.
Could you imagine Burns unable to make it, Usman unable to make it, and then it's Chimaev, as I continue to butcher his name. I will get it right eventually.
Everyone has, though. No one's got I don't think anyone's got the straight definition yet. I've seen every other person pronounce it. You know what? A guy at the bar that we were when we watched the fight, and again, we'll get to the story later. He said he jumped up out of his seat and he was like, "Got to be Masvidal next." And I was like, "Friend, easy." But then I was like, I would watch that fight though.
Well, I would definitely watch it, but I think Maz is going to be fighting Diaz
Yeah.
next, right? And what's interesting is now the BMF belt when it was originally up, that wasn't a 5 round fight, was it?
It was
Oh,
scheduled for 5 rounds. The controversy
okay.
with it now is that, Nate Diaz has come out and said, I was just getting going.
Yeah, so
Um,
Nate Diaz's eye was about to fall out because
yeah,
the about 2 inches of skin was about to come off. You're going to see
right.
his skull, so that's why they
Yeah.
like. I fully was with the doctors with stopping that fight. 3 or 4 more
Oh yeah.
punches, man, and it's like coming off, and like it's just disgusting. So yeah, no matter.
Yes.
I understand you feel robbed, but that fight needed to be stopped. Okay, so I didn't know it was a 5 round fight, but now they're going to fight again, and this title will be on the line. So is the BMF title legit now?
I'm a little bit concerned here because you're looking at a fight that had rumors that the contracts were out, and there's been next to nothing since. You're looking at no talk, no conversations, nothing. Um, I know that the Diaz brothers have a history of being a little bit difficult to work with, especially in regards to contracts. And we've seen a little bit of apprehension from Jorge Masvidal in the past. However, he has a new contract, and I'm sure he's, like he said, he's very happy with it. So it would be interesting for me to see if this fight is going to go ahead. It was rumored to be in January, so they still have a lot of time, and maybe there's no real rush. Um, but I'm being a bit of a fanboy here. I don't think that anyone's going to leapfrog the other people in the division to get all the way to the top. I could definitely see Kamaev being, you know, being going to be in there with Damian Maya. But I mean, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, interesting fight. Vincent Luque, great fight. Maybe Neil Magny. Damian Maya I think is ranked 7th. And if he beats Maya, I mean, he's got Wonderboy, Woodley, Masvidal, Leon Edwards, and Colby in front of him. So after this Maya fight, it's nothing but exciting matchups for Khamzat Chimaev after this. Even you imagine putting him with Darren Till at 185. Like, you just got, there's so many things. He's got the whole entire 2 divisions are wide open for him. And I don't even know when the last time we saw something like that was.
I'm going to tell you one guy that he definitely doesn't have to worry about, and we're just going to get into it right now. That's Tyron Woodley. That name is going to be
Yeah.
removed from those rankings. He's going to be he's done. He's done after that fight. I mean, he definitely wouldn't want to go into a war with that guy, a young buck who's just trying to make his name. Yeah. So after what I saw in that main event, man, it almost looked like he was reprehensive in the fight.
Yeah.
He was reserved at points, and eventually he ended up getting his face pounded in anyway. So
Yeah.
I don't know why you're reserved. In if you don't want to fight, don't fight, man. Like I am not a fan of Kobe Covington, and I did not cheer for him. I was not happy when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
I hope Tyron Woodley's okay. I don't know what
Yeah.
happened there on the ground with the ribs. I hope he's okay. But you need to walk away. Sometimes if the fire's gone, the fire's gone.
Yeah. And I think that, it's hard I mean, God, I can't even imagine what it's like to say, hey, I've defended my welterweight championships 4 times against, 3 real bad dudes. And at one point I was the absolute best in the world at something. I've never been in that position. So it'd be very hard for me to understand how hard it would be to letting go. But at this point, you've seen 15 rounds of Tyron Woodley really struggle to look like his old self. He's one of the most crisp boxers and has unbelievable power in both of his hands in a way, but especially that right hand. I love the way he came out. And then about 40 seconds in, it was the same old tale. It didn't look as bad as the Gilbert Burns fight, but it reminded me exactly of the Kamaru Usman fight, like almost picture perfect, except for the stoppage. I think that age has something to do with it. I think that when you've been knocking people out for 15 years, a bit of the shine gets worn off. I imagine the camps get harder, the weight cuts get worse. And, Tyron Woodley has, I think he's got 5 kids, 5 or 6 kids. He's got a lot going on. He's got a TMZ show. He's pursuing a rap career. Regardless of what Colby Covington says about it, he's still doing the darn thing, and, I just think that, everybody, as much as it's hard to let go, I think there is a time, I say it all the time, like Father Time's undefeated. And, You know, all the guys like Rashad Evans after the post fight said, you know, it reminded him a lot of his decline, you know, where you still want to be able to throw the way you used to, but you can't, and things aren't coming to the same way, and you're not seeing things the same way. Daniel Cormier has talked about it, and I think that no one's going to take away from Tyron Woodley's legacy at this point. I just don't think that he has anything else to offer the division. You can't give a former champ an unseated guy, you know, and I just think that he reached that apex, and he owned it for a while, and, you know, move over and let the next guys come in.
The best way I've heard it put, and it was from a drama I watched recently about sports. You're slow. You're slow. You still
Yeah,
see things the way you saw them, but you're not
mhm,
reacting in the same or with the speed that you had when you were younger. And that
yeah,
just means that you have to either outthink your opponent or you have to walk away. And in this situation, he's got many other streams of income. Walk away, man. You're like, how old is he? Uh,
40, and he's
40.
40 now or turning 41.
Okay, so and not saying that there might not be a fight in your future. Walk away now, take a couple of years off, man. And if there's someone that pisses you off and you want to throw knuckles, you're still an MMA fighter,
Yeah. Take
right?
some
Like,
time for sure. He's been, you know, he's had 2 fights pretty quickly here. Like, he had the Gilbert Burns fight, and now he's had this fight all within quarantine, you know, and where Kamaru Usman's only fought once. I think he's trying to get back up there, but you know, and it's not like I don't want to see him fight. Like, Tyron Woodley at his best is nuts how good he
oh, I
is, right?
remember, yeah.
You know, but we're talking about a guy who has, you know, starting in 2015, he's been in I don't know, at least a handful of movies. I've seen him in a couple TV series. You know, he's doing a lot of stuff. You know, he's been in Pilots. He was in the Kickboxer, Vengeance. He was in a movie Escape Plan 2. I just saw him in. You know, like, he stays active and busy, and he's got a lot of stuff going on. And he's got a movie coming out, or that it just came out in 2020. He was talking about. And, you know, I say, yeah, move on, man. You know, there's no point in taking more punches when you don't have to. Um, and again, your legacy is set, man. You were a former welterweight champion, and you'll go down as one of the best, you know?
So before we move on to this weekend's fights, it was a rough night for the red and white for our nation in the
Yeah.
octagon. Couple submission losses, and any thoughts on those fights, man? It's just happens. That's the way it goes sometimes, right?
Yeah, honestly, hands off. Like, kudos to Randa Marcos. So, by the way, Randa and TJ are from the same area of Ontario. They're both from Windsor and Tecumseh. And what was great is that you can kind of travel with people from your neighborhood, and I'm sure they've crossed paths. But what I loved was Ronda's approach. You know, Mackenzie Dern is kind of known for one thing, and the one thing you have to do in MMA is catch your opponent off guard, give them something they've never seen before. So her approach was very unconventional, not at all what I thought was going to happen. But it was a very dangerous game, and you were playing with one of the best, if not the best female jiu-jitsu practitioner that we have right now. So, you know, it was awesome, and it was ballsy to no end. So kudos to Marcos there, and we'll see her back. You know, she's a great competitor, and she's she's absolutely, without a doubt, we're gonna see her back. She's a crafty veteran at this point. TJ, I just think he made a slight error, and his opponent was experienced enough to catch him in it. It was going to be hard for him to get that guillotine because he was up against the fence. It was a positional thing. It could have been a small oversight. You got to imagine this guy's had a really, really exciting last 2-3 weeks. A lot going on, plus your COVID testing, plus the visa to get just from Canada back, you know, all that. It's had a whirlwind a little bit. I think he just needed to kind of get those jitters out of the way. It was unfortunate. I think he's a much better fighter than Minner is. But you know, we will see him back for sure. I think he did look confident. He looked very light in his feet for the brief time that we saw it, but I wouldn't worry too much about TJ. He's bounced back before. He'll bounce back again.
Yeah, man, Ronda's arm was bent in ways that I never thought an arm could bend. So kudos on being
Yes.
able to be that flexible without tapping it right. I was tapping it the second I was in that armbar, if that
Oh
was me.
yeah.
So the fact that she could flex that on, bend that all the way without tapping, yeah. And TJ, I don't know if it was jitters or whatnot, but it's the first, right?
Right.
And no one was ever made in their first fight, right?
No.
It's you build your way up, right? So just get back in there and try again, man. No added pressure. You know what it's like
Yeah.
now. You know what it's going to feel like going in there. You know what it feels like to be in that octagon. You know what it feels like to make that walk now. So now it's
I
just
feel
come
bad for the next guy. I feel
routine.
bad for the next guy when he comes out with his back against the wall, or he'll feel a little bit like his back is against the wall, and he goes out there and puts up a good performance, and we'll still hound him to come on the show.
Sure. Okay, Jordan, moving ahead to UFC 253, this
Oh yeah.
weekend's pay-per-view. Couple big main events, one for the vacant light heavyweight strap, and then we've got the main event, which is Adesanya versus Paulo Costa. Before we dig too deep into it, which one are you looking forward to the most?
I can't shy away from the main event. I think I just it's kind of everything that we thought the Adesanya Romero fight was going to be, but there's just like Paulo Costa is an absolute freight train, and it's going to be again two forces coming together. But Adesanya loves to counter strike, and Paulo Costa loves to come forward with heavy hands. I think I could not be more excited for this fight. It's going to be absolute violence at its best, and I think the MMA fans win after this one. The main event is unbelievable.
Okay, before why don't we just break it down? I'm not gonna tease everyone. Let's just break this fight down. Let's talk about a little bit of the beef that's going on between these two guys, between Paulo Costa and Adesanya. And Adesanya is we've talked about him previously on the show. He's got a little bit of an attitude issue,
Mm-hmm.
maybe. But I guess you need to be an MMA fighter, to be the
Yep.
best. You have to believe you're the best, right? That's just it. Kind of goes with the territory. So this is going to be an interesting fight. You got like you said, the overwhelming power of Costa, and then the ability of the counter strike and the speed, and maybe even a little bit of reach. I haven't looked too much into it on Adesanya's side. So what do you think happens here? Who comes out on top? And do we see an automatic rematch? Is my question, depending on the outcome.
Somebody's O has got to go, and both fighters are undefeated. Paulo Costa has just had a murderous up climb through the division, has asked for the toughest matches, got the toughest matches, and has put guys out. His fight with Yoel Romero is one of the greatest fights I've ever seen. Go back and watch that. Actually, the UFC just released that on YouTube, I think yesterday or the day before, so you guys can all witness 3 rounds of absolute mayhem. Israel Adesanya, probably the most striker the UFC has ever had. His angles, his movement, the way he switches hand speeds, the way he switches foot speeds, and the way he comes in at different angles, and is really, really interesting, and is likely something that Paulo Costa can't really properly train for. I do say the fact that what's really interesting too is Paulo Costa has really not stopped training. He hurt his shoulder. He was out for 8 months, which is why we got Adesanya versus Romero. Paulo Costa is a gym, like they call them gym rats, but more like a gym wolf anyways. And he's been in there. He kind of has his own gym that his brother started to basically train Paulo. And it's been, the quarantine hasn't affected him whatsoever. He's just been training the whole time. When people weren't allowed to come in the gym, he's like, no problem, it's my gym. Adesanya and the rest of the people at All-Star, at Big City Kickboxing, they have all City Kickboxing in Australia, or sorry, New Zealand. Oh my gosh, they self-isolated. So Volkanovski, Adesanya, Kai Kara France, and a whole bunch of other fighters have all buckled down in their gym and have been living in their gym. So these guys have just been. It's why I'm so excited. These guys have just been training and living where they're training, and training for each other this whole time. So you're going to see two people. No one's going to be like, I didn't have enough time for this. COVID, it doesn't matter. You're going to see two people who have just been training day in and day out to fight each other. I think Paulo Costa is going to learn a valuable lesson in counter striking. I think you're going to see that Israel Adesanya's experience is going to pay off. And you're going to see him, I think you're going to see a similar result as you did the Robert Whittaker fight. But I think it's going to take you a little bit longer to finish Costa if you're even able to. Costa, as big as he is, We haven't seen his gas tank tested in a 3-round fight before. I don't really count the Romero fight because it was just an absolute barn burner. But I think that Israel Adesanya is going to take him into the deep waters and pick him apart round after round after round. And Paulo Costa is going to see something that he hasn't seen before, which is still trying to knock somebody out who can move better in the later rounds.
Yeah, he's going to rope-a-dope him. That's basically what you're saying.
I think he's going to trick him. I think he's going to stand with him. But just he's going to miss a lot. It's going to make Paulo Costa miss a lot. The one thing that Yoel Romero did not do was get out of the way of Costa. Like they were fighting, and Yoel Romero had some head
blocking
movement
punches with his face.
Right, exactly. So I think Adesanya likes to not get hit, and he has put down more experienced strikers. Even coming from a kickboxing background. So that's how it is.
Does Costa switch things up and maybe start throwing him to the body? That's a lot bigger target than a head. Honestly, if I'm a big guy like that and he's moving his head around and he's making me miss, I'm aiming for the bigger body part.
Honestly, I think that would be a great game plan on Paulo Costa. He's a natural body shot thrower anyway, so I think it's going to be undoubtedly we're going to see that. What I'm interested to see the most, John, is how much Costa comes forward or not. If he comes forward recklessly the way Robert Whittaker did, Israel Adesanya can make you pay. It's not that he hits like a truck, but he's like Conor McGregor, unbelievably accurate in where the shot placement is and how to set those shots up. Paulo Costa is a very good boxer and a very tough dude with really fast, heavy hands. But I think Israel Adesanya has seen that over and over again throughout his entire career, and I think that he's very creative in there. He switches stances a lot. He switches angles. He's a side karate stance, traditional boxing stance, and Muay Thai stance, and he fluidly goes through all three of them at times. So I think what you're going to see is I'm interested to see how much Costa comes forward and how aware he is that it's a 5-round fight, and how aware he is that he's likely going to miss 60% of the shots that he throws.
I remember that McGregor quote, and he's like, I might not be the fastest, but my timing is perfect, and I might not be the strongest, but I'm precise.
Yeah, and then
that's what it was, yeah. And that's exactly what he did to Aldo. I remember that, and that was that's burned into my memory because I was just getting into Conor McGregor leading up to that fight, right? And then to see him basically oracle his own fight was just insane.
Yeah, precision beats power and timing beats speed. It's become, and now it's part of the MMA like literary pantheon now.
Yeah, well, that'll be in right underneath his photo on the UFC Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
That's exactly what'll happen. Okay, so moving on to the light heavyweight strap, the vacant strap. Dominic Reyes said that Bones vacated it because he was afraid of him. Is that the truth?
That is, Dominic Reyes is a better PR person. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I think when you call a close fight where somebody did choose to go toe-to-toe with you for a little while, that somebody's scared, absolutely not. When you beat someone, you beat someone. I think rematches are hard to get up for. You haven't seen John Jones take many of them, and what does he do in rematches? He's undefeated. So I think it was an attempt to make some good some clickbait, got some attention to him, but I think it backfired. I think no one's gonna believe that John Jones is afraid of Dominic Reyes. Dominic Reyes had a great fight. John Jones didn't look good, and that doesn't mean Dominic Reyes is a better than John Jones. It means that John Jones, again, we've seen it before, didn't get up for that fight, didn't really care. Was kind of surprised, although he trained. He kind of Alexander Gustafsson it if that was going to be a verb. So Dominic Reyes is the guy who got kind of close to being John Jones once. You don't want that as your claim to fame anyway. This is the first time the light heavyweight title has not been held by somebody with the name Daniel Cormier or John Jones in essentially the last 10 years. So that's what makes this very exciting. Both gentlemen throw hands. Both gentlemen have knockout power. They've each beaten a former middleweight champion recently, and I think you're going to have, again, a hell of a fight.
I'm going to throw you a curveball here, and one that I'll forgive you if you don't have an answer, but I feel that these two gentlemen are transition champions. You just brought up the names Cormier and Jones. I don't feel either of these gentlemen are Cormier or Jones. Who coming up the pipeline is the next Cormier or Jones?
Exactly. You know what? I'm going to 100% agree with you on that. I think while both are skilled, to me, they're kind of like the top 5 people. They're good for the time being right now, but I don't think for a second that they are the top of the actual division while John Jones is hanging out, you're always going to have a light heavyweight that's better than you. And while both guys are extremely talented, you're starting to see that light heavyweight division thin out a little bit. You know, Johnny Walker didn't even look that good on the weekend, although he pulled out a W, but didn't look all that great. And he was supposed to be the next, thing in that division. So you're seeing a lot of stagnant movement, and you're right. Placeholder, transitional champion. You absolutely nailed it on the head. I agree with you.
So no one has emerged as a possible next one in the light heavyweight division. We'll have to wait. I remember seeing the stat when they were showing the fight or hyping the fight in this previous fight night. I believe there were 10 champions in between
Yeah.
a couple years there. So we may be in for something like that here in the light heavyweight division.
Yeah.
Who doesn't like seeing a strap change hands, right? Especially if there
Every
isn't
other
an
week.
overwhelming favorite to cheer for. So it'll be interesting to see. Moving on, before we get out of here, any other fights on this card? I know you spoke about Karkari France being a
Yeah.
training partner with Israel Adesanya, fighting the flyweight division against Roviel. And then we got a women's bantamweight fight with Eubanks taking on, as I probably will butcher this, Via Riera.
You're right. I budget too.
And then finally rounding out the main card, Hakeem Dawadu versus I'm not even going to try and pronounce that. That one's go and look it for yourself, ladies and gentlemen. That one's
Yeah.
I'll destroy that one. So either of those fights pique your interest, Jordan?
You know what? The rest of the main card is really well done. It's a matchmakers, really a check mark or a pat on the back for the matchmakers. Kai Kara France is coming off an awesome performance against Tyson Nam. Although it was a bit of a step down in competition. You know, he looked really good doing it. Unanimous decision on the Felder Hooker card. And he's someone who's exciting. You know, he competed on the Ultimate Fighter. That's when we first saw him. I remember he beat Terrence Mitchell in like 30 seconds. But anyways, it was an up and coming prospect. He has great placement, kind of a time to shine. Ketlen Vieira, you know, when and Ciara Eubanks and Caitlin Vieira, it's hard for me to really get up for these bantamweight fights because, you know, they're not Amanda Nunes. They're not up on that level. So it's like it's gonna be very competitive. And rounding up the rest of the card, again, good matchups. What I am interested in seeing, and I think is a little bit newsworthy, is this is going to be Diego Sanchez's last fight, at least in the UFC. So he's fighting at welterweight against Jake Matthews, which is going to be a great fight. Jake Matthews is a tough guy, and Diego Sanchez is looking to go on a sword, and he's looking to have, for all you history buffs of the UFC, he's also going to have Stephan Bonner in his corner. And famously, they had a fight over asparagus on the very first season of The Ultimate Fighter. So, and they become really good friends, and they also talk about UFOs and how they've both seen them a lot too. So I think it's kind of cool, that whole thing coming full circle. Diego Sanchez, you know, an absolute legend in the sport.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember the nightmare, and I remember people, you know, not wanting to go up against him, and how much of a challenge that man was. So to think that it'll be his last fight, and possibly in the octagon, something to,
it's gonna be
to
sad.
definitely, yeah. Well,
He's
it
the
might be a
last of the
little
old
sad,
guard.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it'll be something to look forward to, right?
The last of that generation. You know, I don't think anyone from the first season is still competing at either division. Remember, they were welterweights and middleweights at the time, I believe, or something. I mean, that's horrible for me. I should know that. Light heavyweights and middleweights, I think. Anyways, long story short, it's sad to see basically the last person from that first season rounded his career. He's been in some wars. His personality is kind of questionable at this point. It's just a lot of crazy stuff. But yeah, I think that's, you know, there's a lot of other great fights. The Shane Young, Nate Landwehr. Nate Landwehr is the train. This is so exciting to watch. He's so odd. He always has a crazy haircut and just literally comes forward. Dana White loves watching this guy fight. He's an absolute lunatic in that ring, so that's always fun to see him fight. But yeah, I think on the prelims, you look at Diego Sanchez is kind of the big storyline there. Not taking away from anyone else on the card, but yeah, this is the main event focused fight card, and with one kind of intriguing fight for nostalgic sake on the prelims, as far as I.
Okay, so before we get out of here, Jordan, there was some breaking news in
Yes.
MMA. Duda Santana failed her USADA test, has been suspended for 2 years, and has been released by the UFC. Said that she is innocent, bought some tainted supplements, and the UFC. I've read the article. They said they believe her, but you got to follow the USADA rules, and they've let her go.
You know what? I think that you have a situation where everyone knows what is happening here. Everyone knows the rules. Everyone knows exactly what the expectation is. There shouldn't be any real surprises here. If it's a tainted supplement situation, you flat out say, tainted supplement, and once you start to makes the announcements, there can be a 6-month sanction for a violation, depending on what it is. I think it's Fritzen Procopia had some Osterine in her urine or something like that, and that's more of a dietary. It's commonly found in dietary supplements, which are still, again, they're prohibited but not banned. I think when you reach into the banned substance pool, then it starts to become like, no 6-month. We have to give you kind of the maximum thing. The UFC, again, people should know this. The UFC washes their hands with this. They don't have a say in how the fighters are punished. They leave it 100% up to USADA, and that way it's fair across the board, and they're removed out of it. They took a lot of slack for a lot of years with the commissions and some of the fighter criticisms because they were too involved in it. So yes, this is not a good look. I could see them absolutely clearing their hands of it. They have spent millions, tens of millions of dollars to clean this sport up. And the last thing you want to do is still see people trying to skirt around the system. And it definitely also, it's a, what's what I'm looking for here? It sets an example. It reminds people of the example. Reminds people that what the punishment is, because we haven't seen a lot of these lately. We've seen, no full punishment, just a lot of warnings or some, suspensions based on tainted supplements, which is not necessarily your fault. But again, the conversation always comes around like clean athletes are clean athletes. Daniel Cormier has been tested since he was 20 and he's 41. He's never popped for anything, no warnings, no nothing. It's up to the fighter now. They have all the information in the world. There actually is no excuse. I know shit happens, but it really is unacceptable. And, 2 years is a career killer and can really hurt somebody. And I think that's the price you got to pay.
Can we see, or do we see her appeal and get a lighter sentence?
You know what? You can appeal it. They don't normally go the fighter's way. I think that with USADA being so unbelievably comprehensive in their testing, that it would be very difficult if the UFC is going to know a little bit more than the press. And they've got a direct line to USADA because they dump millions in there. Not enough to mess around with the program or for it to be corrupt, but they're going to look at the likelihood of how this stuff gets, like I said, the other example, where you have something that comes up and it's prohibited, right? Prohibited meaning, we don't want you to use it. Banned being like it's basically illegal and is it unheard of or there's no reason. Prohibited, if I have a bunch of testosterone in my body can maybe naturally produce it. That could be dietary. That could be a whole a bunch of other stuff. If I'm looking at stuff that, like Osterine, I can't, my body doesn't produce such a large sum of that that it's going to, and it's going to enhance my performance. My body can't do that. I can't grow extra muscle. I have to build that naturally, right? And when you put these things that are synthetic into your system and then they're detected, that's when the questions are coming up, right? It's not because I have too much estrogen or too much any of this sort of stuff. My body produces this stuff naturally. If I have a high rate of it, it's because my body does it. If I have something that I'm putting in my body and that's coming up on a test, like what did she test positive for? Like it was like an androgen receptor modulator, like, and it was during an out of competition test. Your body is not going to have that built up naturally, right? And again, her statement says that she bought poor supplements, but you got to be responsible for it. You saw to test these things, and they have an app that every fighter has, and although they're going to believe that her innocence, it just looks bad because this is not the kind of stuff that you normally do find in regulated supplements from USADA. I know I'm getting into a whole boring kind of dry conversation here, but it's almost past the point of oops, That's what I'm trying to say, right? I know, I know it's a complicated thing, and it's not like Santana was, you know, maybe she doesn't have access, or I don't know. I mean, it'd be hard for you to explain away to me right now how you're testing positive for something at this level. You know, this is like amateur level stuff, you know, and yeah.
So,
Sorry.
I mean, I understand you can't have a bunch of roided out freaks
Yeah.
fighting each other. That's not a good look. And I'm not going to get into all of that. You know, the UFC knows what they know. They're going to do what they're going to do. Personally, I think steroids should be legal for the athletes to recover, not to enhance. But I mean these guys and girls are putting their bodies through things that we can't even imagine. Like, could just go to baseball, one of the sports that you think is one of the easiest. Could you imagine running 27 kilometers an hour, diving flat out and landing on your chest on a hard surface?
Dude, I
No,
just
thank
played
you.
3 rounds of golf in 3 days, and my body 2 days later still feels like I've been through a meat grinder. That's
So
golf.
my point is like the steroids should be legal for these guys and girls. It should be not for competition, not to enhance your ability to be a better fighter, but to recover from the damage that you're doing to your body, for sure. So I don't know where that would stand in USADA and where that would stand in the realm of professional sports, but I think it's backwards to a degree. I
It's a
shouldn't be
tough
able to
one,
go
yeah.
get steroids. My fat ass should not be able to go get steroids to fix me, and then someone who's working their ass off to make their body into the shape of a Greek god isn't allowed afforded the same.
It's a tough one. You know, I respect your opinion and respect where you stand on it. I just think that you're gonna find these people who are gonna exploit any system that's out there. It's hard to say when people are gonna be recovery is kind of a self-diagnosed thing, and you're gonna run into a situation where you can kind of just say that people have already abused it. The history is already there, right? Whether you were Chael Sonnen or Vitor Belfort or whoever, it's been there. That once you find a small, loophole, I think the UFC is kind of playing it, as safely as they can without being sorry. I think just kind of running an absolutely no tolerance policy is it's hard, the lesser of two evils.
Yeah,
I think it's what they're going for.
definitely the lesser of two evils, but I mean, we're getting into a world where we can make designer drugs. So just go ahead and put that little octagon logo on the microscopic thing, and then create your own
Just juice them
steroid.
all out.
No, create your own
And
steroid, right? And then that is only administered by your doctors. They can only get it from your doctors, so you know when you're administering it for their recovery. And I mean, I understand I'm talking about future, I'm talking about sci-fi, but we're not that far out of it.
yeah,
We're not
we're
that
talking
far out
about
of it.
like we're like what's that show? Altered Carbon. Like
Yeah.
just getting right into it. Like
We're
woo.
not that far out of it anyway. Well, like last time, before we delve into the world of the crazy, we should get out of here. We'll be back next week. We'll break down everything that happened in UFC 253, and we'll look forward to the future as we always do. It was great talking to you, Jordan.
Yeah,
Uh,
but you too.
you know what? Actually, before we get out of here, you had a
Sure.
story to tell us. You had a story to tell us about
Oh
how you
man,
got
yeah.
to the
Sorry.
or how you got to watch the fights this weekend, and I don't want to deprive the fans of that.
It's okay. No, I mean it was just pretty wild. So we're in Niagara Falls. We're doing a bit of a golf trip with some friends, and there's so many sports. A lot of stuff's happening. You've got NBA playoffs. You've got NHL playoffs. You've got the U.S. Opens going on, and it's a lot of like people, like wanting to watch their sport. Where usually it's more spaced out during the year, right? Plus Showtime ran a boxing event. So we're going from bar to we have dinner at the Keg. They're not playing the fights. Baseball's also going on. There's a list of sports, but you get what I'm saying. So we're going from basically bar. We didn't drive. Like we've had drinks and we were responsible. So we basically spent like $60 in Ubers trying to go to 5 different places. One of them, right, was even a Boston Pizza, but it was already so full because of social distancing, you couldn't go in and watch the fight. So we're flipping a coin. Like, do we just go to our small TV hotel room and watch the fights, or do I watch on my computer or something? No, like we're out, guys. Let's go watch the fight. Of all the places that we went to, 3 sports bars, 2 Boston Pizzas. Now, again, the one Boston Pizza was full. The other one wasn't showing the fight. They were watching boxing, which I don't know if that's a licensed thing or not, but we'll figure that out later. We ended up at an Irish pub that's not very busy, sitting at the bar, and we're like, do you mind if we put on the fights? And the guy was like, absolutely. So we have a single TV at an Irish bar where Guinness was the special, the most odd sporting like setting that we could think of, like not a sports bar, like not a Shoeless Joe's, or like a traditional Irish pub, Irish music going on in the corner. Everyone around us is just like the most odd setting. And then like, oh, do you think we can get the sound on? And the bartender was like, absolutely no chance. So as you know, we're watching the fights and all these eye poke controversies and nut shots and point deductions. And I'm like, what is going on? We can't hear anything. And there's no closed captions on. So we've literally spent like our bar budget trying to find a place to go to watch the fight. Where we go to watch the fight is barely serving chicken wings or any kind of, fat guy stuff that we like to eat when we're drinking. I can't hear the sound and the TV's tiny, but it's the best we could do for the fight. So thank God John and I were texting, because I was like, what happened? And John would say, Nico Price got deducted a point. And I was like, oh my God, really? Or then Tyron Woodley essentially breaks a rib, but all we see is the fight being stopped. We have no context. So it was a wild scenario, but it just goes to show you the dedication that John and I have towards the sport. And no matter what happens, I'll sacrifice not only the guys' weekend, but I made sure that we were able to watch the fights. Thank you, Doc McGilligan's in Niagara Falls. Great service.
I was gonna say, you know what? You can think that you paid $60 or $80 to get to watch the fights, but you know what you actually paid that for? You paid $80 for a great story.
It is, and I'll tell you what else. So that's a great story, and thank you, John. What I loved about the whole thing, what I got more from it, was the fact that because we were in that spot and there wasn't a lot of your traditional UFC fans around, it was actually a ton of fun to explain to people what was going on that didn't know. They were just curious. They were just had that on the background. The bartender asked us questions. The older couple who were from Belleville, they asked us questions. And then once we saw this conversation happening, and these couple of Irish guys came over here and like, so what's he doing? And I'm like, and then all of a sudden I'm kind of like teaching this MMA class. And that was the cool part. It was a great story, but it's nice to see so many casual, I mean, not even casual, super casual people that were so into what was going on, and it was very unique to them, even though the UFC has been around for 25 years. So the sport's still growing, and hopefully that bar, they should have that on every night, because eventually the bartender loved it, because they were cashing out their bills with their tables and then sitting at the bar and watching everything. So it was a cool experience, but I'll make sure I line that up next time. I have to have a reservation at a spot knowing full well that it was a big card. So but again, and I also tried to coordinate the guys' weekend around a pay-per-view, but it still ended up being this awesome card. So I can have worse problems, I guess.
Like I said, you paid a couple bucks for a good story. You had a great time, and you got to meet a bunch of good people.
Yeah, man.
I'm sure they had haggis on the menu, but they definitely didn't. They weren't
It boxed these.
Just some stuff you had to go and get some street meat or whatever on your walk back to the hotel or whatnot. Yeah, it was great talking to you as always, Jordan.
Yeah, buddy.
Like I said, we'll get back at it next week when we're breaking down what happened in this pay-per-view. Once again, thanks everyone for listening. You can follow me at John Lodge Music on Twitter, and at Jordan Grenke for Jordan. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think of the show. Let us know what you think is going to happen in the cards. And let us know what you want to hear about. As always, this has been Puncher's Chance. Peace.
Enjoy the fights, everybody.
Later, man.
Later, buddy.